These things became the fixed assets on accountants' balance sheets and the investments that economists and national statisticians counted up in their attempts to understand economic growth. Over time, the nature of these assets and investments changed. Fields and oxen became less important. Animals gave way to machinery and factories and vehicles and computers. But the idea that assets are for the most part things you could touch, and that investment means building or buying physical things, was as true for 20th century accountants and economists as it was for the scribes of Doomsday Book. Why investment matters. The nature of investment is important to all sorts of people, from bankers to managers. Economists are no exception. Investment occupies a central place in much economic thought. Investment is what builds up capital, which, together with labour, constitutes the two measured inputs to production that power the economy, the sinews and joints that make the economy work. Gross domestic product is defined as the sum of the value of consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. Of these four, investment is often the driver of booms and recessions, as it tends to rise and fall more dramatically in response to monetary policy and business confidence. The investment element of GDP is where the animal spirits of the economy bark, and where a recession first bites. As a result, the statisticians, whose job it is to work out national income, have put long and sustained efforts into measuring how much businesses invest, year after year, quarter after quarter. Since the 1950s, national statistical agencies have sent out regular questionnaires to businesses to find out how much businesses are investing. Periodic studies are done to understand how long particular assets last, and, especially for high-tech investments like computers, how much they are improving over time. Until very recently, the investments that national statistical offices measured were all tangible assets. Although these investments represented the modern age in all its industrial glory, in 2015 in the UK, for example, businesses invested £78 billion in new buildings, £60 billion in IT, plant and machinery, and £17 billion in vehicles. The basic principle that investment was about physical goods would have made sense to William the Conqueror's Reeves. The dark matter of investment. But, of course, the economy does not run on tangible investment alone. Stansted Airport, for example, owned not just tarmac and terminals and trucks, but also things that were harder to see or touch, complex software, valuable agreements with airlines and retailers, internal know-how. All these things had taken time and money to build up and had a lasting value to whoever owned the airport, but they consisted not of physical stuff, but of ideas, knowledge, and social relations. In the language of economists, they were intangible. The idea that an economy might come to depend on things that were immaterial was an old one. Futurists like Alvin Toffler and Daniel Bell had begun to talk about the post-industrial future as long ago as the 1960s and 1970s. As the power of computers and the Internet became more apparent in the 1990s, the idea that immaterial things were economically important became increasingly widely accepted. Sociologists talked of a network society and a post-Fordist economy. Business gurus urged managers to think about how to thrive in a knowledge economy. Economists began to think about how research and development and the ideas that resulted from it might be incorporated into their models of economic growth, an economy parsimoniously encapsulated by the title of Diane Coyle's book, The Weightless World. Authors like Charles Ledbetter suggested we might soon be living on thin air. The bursting of the dot-com bubble in 2000 dampened some of the wilder claims about a new economy, but research continued among economists to understand what exactly was changing. It was in this context that a group of economists assembled in Washington in 2002 at a meeting of the Conference on Research in Income and Wealth to think about how exactly to measure the types of investment that people were making in what they were calling the new economy. At this conference and afterwards, Carol Corrado and Dan Sickle of the U.S. Federal Reserve Board and Charles Hulton of the University of